Challenge your own preconceptions. Take the ignorance test. In the 1990s, a professor at a medical university in Stockholm decided to test his students' knowledge about the progress of global development. He was staggered to discover the class, some of the brightest people in Sweden, scored fewer than 2 out of 5 on average. Chimpanzees randomly choosing answers would likely have done better, scoring half right. That academic was Hans Rosling, professor of global health at the Karolinska Institute and a medical doctor who had carried out decades of research in Africa, discovering the complexities of the continent and a few diseases along the way. His work in Africa had resulted in an enormous intellectual erration that was lumped countries as different as Brazil and Mozambique together under the label the developing world. Rosling has been on a mission to inform since the realization that his students and his fellow professors were somewhat woefully informed about the state of the world. Today, CNN publishes Rosling's latest survey of the United States, which shows Americans, like most of the world, are far behind the reality in their understanding of world development, but ahead of some, for example, Swedes. He wants to challenge the preconceptions we all have about the state of progress in the world, hoping that if we recognize our ignorance, we can see what has been achieved and tackle the outstanding problems. In 2005, he co-founded the Gapminder Foundation, which aims to promote a fact-based world view. The following year, Rosling spoke at a conference run by TED, the non-profit organization devoted to ideas worth spreading. The problem for me was not ignorance, he told the audience, it was preconceived ideas. Rosling's striking data presentation, showcasing software developed by Gapminder, has since been viewed more than 6 million times through TED, which describes him as a data visionary. You can watch the video here or to the left of this text. In May 2012, Time magazine named Rosling one of the world's 100 most influential people. Describing Rosling for the Time Beast, Harvard social scientist Nicholas A. Christakis said he was in the vanguard of a critically important activity, advancing the public understanding of science. Now Rosling and Gapminder are testing that public understanding this year, conducting web-based ignorance surveys in Sweden and Britain, and most recently the United States. How did you go? Was your global perception spot on, or did you display a lack of understanding of the progress in education, health, and fertility reduction and income inequality in the world? More importantly, what was it that led to your choices? If your answers were correct, were they based on factual knowledge, or did you follow the example of chimpanzees and guess randomly? It is possible that you were informed by the toxic combination of arrogance and ignorance. Rosling believes it is often displayed by Western Europeans and North Americans, the Old West. As a university lecturer, he saw that his students had a very old view of the world. There was constant discussion of the world in terms of we and they, he said. Rosling realized the concept of the developed and developing countries was hindering understanding of the emerging world, giving an impression of remaining homogeneity of a so-called developing world. The terms did not describe the enormous difference between Brazil and Somalia, Malaysia, and Afghanistan. Rosling's corporate audiences also failed to understand the characteristics of each country. They had a sort of regional concept of the world that said Southeast Asia is like this, Latin America is like that, the Middle East is like that, he said. We have the United Arab Emirates and Yemen bordering, Barbados and Haiti. Barbados can compete with the United States on child mortality. There's no homogeneity between Finland and Greece, but between Greece and Chile, there's no major difference, he says. I think that it's the failure to grasp that the new emerging world has countries on each and every level that makes people fail so badly on the world test. The world was easier to explain 50 years ago, Rosling says. Once a third of the population was living separated from the rest at the rich end, they called themselves Western. While too many people were still living with the misery of poverty, he said the new reality was that there was a continuous variation of socio-economic levels. As late as the late 1970s, it was still a camel with two humps. Today the camel is dead. It has been replaced by a dromedary with one hump, he said. I used to say you can't divide the population of London into clever and stupid, Rosling said. The vast majority is in the middle. That's how the world is today. When we ask about literacy rates in the world, when we ask about life expectancy, the percentage of children vaccinated, people think about Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, the worst of cases, and then they extrapolate to the rest of what they still think is a developing world. They understand there is a huge disparity between the richest and the poorest, but then they think there is a big hump in the poor and sick end. That's not the case anymore, he says. Social progress. And Rosling says it's a mistake to assume a country's economic position matches its social development. Today, the social dimension of life progresses much faster than the economic, he said. Vietnam today has the same life expectancy, the same disease burden as the US had in the 1980s. They are only 30 years behind, but economically they correspond to the US in 1880. They are still 130 years behind economically, he said. It means today countries get healthy before they get rich. People's skills are ahead of their economy. Rosling said that for him the most surprising lack of knowledge demonstrated in the quiz was on the measles vaccination. Just 70% of the US respondents chose the correct answer. 80% of the world's children are vaccinated by their first birthday. 44% wrongly guessed the fifth of children, and 39% said half. That to me was absolutely astonishing because it is the most solid and stable success of the world. Now it vaccinates 4 out of 5 children, said Rosling. It's a beautiful example of global collaboration, life-saving technology, the flagship of aid, awareness among governments and parents in even the poorest countries, and it's not known. China and India. Rosling says His experience suggests that the CEOs of the world's biggest companies have the most fact-based knowledge, seeking, for example, to move research and development to India and China, and competing for the skilled workforce wherever they were born and trained. The two countries 25 years ago, known for cheap goods produced by low-paid workers, were now competing at engineering level, he says, and that professional skill is also happening faster than the economic growth. Their engineers are much more competent than their income suggests. Rosling pointed to last week's results from the OECD's measure of school achievement, the PISA tests. Sweden, he said, had fallen in math more than any other country. The shining star in the world is Shanghai, he said. That's what CEOs from big companies say. If I want mathematical analytical work done, it's done in China. Rosling warned, however, that it would be a mistake to assume that poverty was no longer an issue, and that while income inequality between countries had decreased, inside most nations it had widened. There's still a severe and scary amount of extreme poverty in rural parts of India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Burma, and sub-Saharan Africa, he said. Predicting the wants of middle-income countries is comparatively easy, he says. There are things such as education, hot and cold water, refrigeration, and transport. In short, modern homes and lives. But how fast extreme poverty will leave Afghanistan, northern Nigeria? That's difficult to predict, but it will. If it doesn't, the world as a whole will have a major problem. It won't function with collapsed areas. To me, it seems easier to end it fast instead of slowly, as the population keeps growing so fast in the poorest communities. Rosling describes his role as gapminder as edutainer, and says he aims to convey deadly serious facts with humor, and compete with tabloids, maintaining content worthy of the Swedish Academy of Science, or which he is a member. The ignorance survey is one way of encouraging people to adopt a fact-based view of the world. We see that this as the theoretical part of driving license, he says. It tells you how to drive, not where to drive. It is the structure in which you can put more detailed knowledge of the world. It's a shelf. Opinion. What Asian schools can teach the rest of the world? In a global economy, the benchmark for educational success is no longer improvement by national standards alone, but the best performing school systems internationally. Results from the latest PISA assessment, the world's metric for evaluating learning outcomes at school, show amazing changes in the composition of the global talent pool. Shanghai, already the top-performing education system in 2009, has extended its lead in students' math performance over the next highest performer, Singapore, to the equivalent of a full school year. And what was at the time when Singapore too saw rapid progress? Other East Asian systems, including Chinese Taipei and Japan, also saw improved student learning outcomes. PISA, the program for international student assessments, was conducted in 2012, a year when many of the 65 participating countries were grappling with the aftermath of an economic crisis that has brought home the urgency of equipping more people with better skills to collaborate, compete, and connect in ways that drive economies forward. Some content that Shanghai's success in PISA just reflects rote learning and immense ruling for tests. But the most impressive performance of Shanghai students is actually not on the tasks that ask them to simply reproduce what they have learned, but on tasks where they need to extrapolate from what they know and apply their knowledge creatively in novel situations. Data on other Chinese provinces and cities is not yet published by PISA because not enough regions take part in the test to be considered representative. However, China as a whole is expected to be included in the 2015 assessment. Google knows everything. Consider this, only 2% of American students can conceptualize, generalize, and use advanced math in creative ways, which is what the highest performance level in PISA requires. In Shanghai, it is over 30%. Shanghai has understood that the world economy will pay an ever-rising premium on excellence, and that today's economy no longer rewards people simply for what they know. Google already knows everything, but for what they can do with what they know. Others have explained Shanghai's high performance with the inclusion of disadvantaged internal immigrants from the comparisons. But immigrants have always been part of Shanghai's PISA tests, and most East Asian school systems excel precisely because they are capable to leverage the academic potential of disadvantaged students much better than many Western nations do, and because they are able to break the downward spiral between disadvantage, lower performance, and lower levels of students' engagement. They have devised powerful strategies to attract the most talented teachers to the most challenging classrooms and to get the strongest principals into the toughest schools. While the American dream of social mobility is becoming a distant memory for the next generation of American students, it is just emerging as a new reality in East Asia. Obviously, one can't copy and paste school systems wholesale, but PISA has revealed a surprising number of features which the world's most successful school systems share and from which others can learn. For a start, leaders in the East Asian education systems have convinced their citizens to make choices that value education, their future, more than consumption today. But placing a high value on education is just part of their equation. Hard work vs. talent. Another part is the belief in the possibilities for all children to achieve. In Japan, for example, students not only believe they are in control of their ability to succeed, but they are prepared to do what it takes to do so. 84% of students say they won't put off difficult problems. In the US, only half did so. The fact that students in most Asian countries consistently believe that achievement is mainly a product of hard work, rather than inherited intelligence, suggests that education and its social context can make a difference in instilling values that foster success in education. In the past, different students were taught in similar ways. Shanghai embraces diversity with differentiated instructional practices. Its teachers have high expectations for every student and realize that ordinary students have extraordinary talents. They also share clear and ambitious standards across the board. Everyone knows what is required to get given qualification. Teachers matter, and nowhere does the quality of a school system exceed the quality of its teachers. The East Asian school systems will all pay great attention to how they select and train their staff. And when deciding where to invest, they prioritize the quality of teachers over the size of classes. Not least, they provide intelligent pathways for teachers to grow in their careers. High performers have also moved on from bureaucratic control and accountability to professional forms of work organization. They support their teachers to make innovations in pedagogy to improve their own performance and that of their colleagues, and to pursue professional development that leads to stronger educational practice. The goal of the past was standardization and compliance. Top performance enabled teachers to be inventive. In the past, the policy on outcomes shifting from looking upwards in a bureaucracy towards looking outwards to the next teacher, the next school, about creating networks of innovation. You can see that nowhere better than in Finland and Japan. The most impressive outcome of world-class system is perhaps that they deliver high quality across the entire school system, so that every student benefits from excellent learning, and they elegant policies and practices effectively across all aspects of the system. They make them coherent over sustained periods of time, and they see that they are consistently implemented. You can see that nowhere better than in Singapore. Room for improvement. And yet, there are areas where Shanghai too has room for improvement. Intrinsic motivation is often law. For example, only 36% of students in Shanghai say they like to solve complex problems. Just 75% say that school has taught them things which could be useful in a job, compared with an OECD average of 87%. There are also indications that Shanghai schools can improve the social climate for learning. Just 2/3 of Shanghai's 15-year-olds feel they belong at school. On average, across OECD's countries, it is over 80%, and in some countries over 90%. Not least, just 77% of students in Shanghai say that other students like them, compared with an average of 90s. The challenges are tough, and the status quo has many protectors. But global comparisons like PISA remind us of what is possible in education, and they help us to set meaningful targets in terms of major goals achieved by the world's educational leaders. The world has become indifferent to tradition and past reputations, unforgiving of fragility and ignorant of custom or practice. Success will go to those individuals, institutions, and countries which are swift to adapt, slow to complain, and open to change. And the task for governments is to ensure that their citizens and education systems rise to this challenge. Siri says, "Dump him. How mobile devices could run or ruin your life." The web is set to change our lives dramatically over the next decade. This will also raise questions about the use of personal data and the need to balance new powers with ethics. Here are 5 ways you can expect the explosion in technology to impact you. First, artificial intelligence and ultra-smart software engines will be invaded everywhere. They will be largely invisible yet become indispensable for most Internet users, and will combine dozens of data streams harvested from our digital breadcrumbs. Mobile devices are the key to this empire, and the convergence of TV and Internet, known as social TV, will add yet another dimension to this exponential trend. The TV will know who you are. Powerful, fast, totally customized, and self-learning algorithms will feed off our personal data streams, giving us an ever-expanding and free choice of seemingly harmless anticipatory service. Prediction engines will be able to give a heads up on anything from weather to stock market changes to food warnings or even imminent relationship changes. For many of us, this will cross the border into creepiness. Imagine your mobile device recommending that you break your next data because of obvious incompatibility based on what the system knows about you. It will start to literally run our lives. Second, automation is likely to do away with hundreds of millions of simple jobs. It will replace cab drivers or need with self-driving cars, checkout clerks, all done on mobiles, data analysts, bank tellers, file clerks, delivery people, and others. Small software engines and network cloud systems are likely to replace accountants and bookkeepers, among others, while delivery drones will replace delivery drivers. Robots will become common in many households, such as for basic elderly care, but will remain far from human-like or even sentient for quite some time. Reports such as the Oxford Modern School Future of Employment study have already predicted that nearly half of all U.S. jobs could eventually be automated away. Clearly, human-only tasks and right-brain skills will need to be much more emphasized in education as well, and the concept of a minimum guaranteed income may seem a lot less futuristic fairly soon. We may get paid to just be creative. Third, augmented reality and natural human-computer interfaces would overtake traditional means of making queries. We are going from typing a request to speaking, to gesturing, to blinking, to thinking. Some may start to feel like they live inside a machine or that the machine lives inside of them. Humans are likely to become dependent on digital machines and what they do for us, simply because they will be so easy to use, so powerful, so addictive, and because they make so much money for those who run them. This is not as dystopian as it may sound, but there are ways to balance the trend. Fourth, automated real-time, mobile, and accurate language translation will be with us within 5 years. Imagine speaking into your mobile device and having someone else receive the precise translation at most the same moment in a multitude of languages. Then, imagine all these conversations being recorded and added to your profile in your personal cloud. This will dramatically change the nature of media and advertising. Kids may also question the using of learning languages. Fifth, everything will be recorded, photo and videographed, tracked and measured. Your car's movements, your performance at work, your dietary habits, the metadata of your communications will all be scanned. The explosive growth of the Internet of Things and the upcoming explosion of Internet access in devices that are wearable, embedded or implanted means we can expect this trend to be all pervasive within the coming decade. Do we need to control this? The most important consequence of such trends will be the reemergence of ethics as a key issue. Major challenges such as personal data protection, privacy, human augmentation, digital obesity, and dependency on technology will be magnified exponentially. We will no longer ask if someone is possible or tolerable, but whether we should do it, where and when. I predict many of tomorrow's leaders, thinkers, innovators, scientists, and creatives will spend time and effort devising something like a global digital bill of rights and ethics. The need for global agreements on these key issues will emerge as a direct response to the vastly accelerating abuse of personal data and the powerful L that controls it, giving those that control it almost irresistible powers. I predict even the most technology-friendly or social network-obsessed users will soon start to object to being instrumentalized in such a way. This will force governments and businesses towards creating a secure framework for society. As with nuclear power, we will need to distinguish between what can be used for bona fide purposes and what could be used for sinister purposes. The resulting digital data and our ecosystem will need to become the global guidance, akin to a kind of artificial intelligence and automation, non-proliferation agreement. Technology does not have ethics, but we should.